Welcome to Conversations in the Coop. I'm your host, Trinity Director of Athletics, Drew Galbraith. It's my pleasure today to be joined by two members of Trinity's varsity rowing team, Patrick McGeoghean and Tommy Mullane. Guys, thanks for joining. Now, we could be sitting here chatting about a lot of different parts of your Trinity experience. You've both been through 4 years in the program now, or just started your fourth years in the program. The team has had a tremendous amount of success and a real resurgence competitively, and both in the number of, as well as the number of rowers at Trinity. But your kind of secret to your story is a radio show on Trinity's on-campus radio station. So we're going to get to music today. We're going to talk rowing. We're going to talk everything else. But we always like to go back to the beginning. What made you row at Trinity? So, Patrick, what about you?
Well, I started rowing my freshman year of high school, and then I got recruited to row here. It was an appealing place to be, so that's kind of how I ended up here. But Tommy had a different path.
Yeah, I played baseball. I went to prep school. I did a postgraduate year to play baseball, and then I tore my ACL 2 times in high school. So I had a little bit of a abrupt ending to my baseball career, but it's actually my mom and my brother who really pushed me to row, and I reached out to Kevin in the winter of my freshman year, and I walked on in the spring, and I was placed in a boat right away. A really unique experience to get placed in a boat right away. I got to race my freshman spring. It was I really came to the school for the academics, so it was nice that I got to have such a great experience with the rowing team in addition.
We've had a number of your teammates, former teammates on the podcast before, but what's different about a collegiate rowing team? Because it does feel, when you're around the boathouse, when you're around the different crews, it does feel like there's some different bond that takes place in a rowing program that maybe some other team sports don't have. What do you guys think is different about rowing?
Tommy and I woke up at 5 in the morning today, and we had practice at 6 in the dark. So I think, and that's every day for us. So I think there's probably a certain bond that comes with doing these sort of gritty activities with one another. Especially we have 2 seasons in the fall and spring, and then in the winter you can't really step off the gas. So we do a lot together. We spend a lot of time together, and we do a lot of work together. So I think that probably is the reason for that.
I think, like Pat said this morning, we're practicing in the dark. I looked around at one point in the practice, and it's, we have 4/8 of guys. Everyone's putting in the same work. Everyone's working hard. We're doing some really fun but hard pieces today on the water, and I think it's just a really unique experience. And we eat all of our meals together too. But it's nice we take up one big table. Well, now 2 big tables in the dining hall. Just all rowers, but it's a really unique experience to be on a rowing team, and it's really, I think it's different from a lot of different sports just because you're always together, and even in the winter, even when you're training, you're always training with somebody. There's always someone next to you on the erg. It's a lot of fun.
So last night, throughout the Northeast, actually throughout the northern part of the country, northern lights were visible. Describe the serenity of being, like, particularly now as we get later in the fall. You're out there in the dark on the Connecticut River, going up to the downtown area and then coming back down. Just describe for someone who might not understand what that experience is like in the dark, or even some of those days when you see the eagles, flying around above you.
Yep, my grandmother used to refer to a sunset as like the great painter. So I always think about that every morning whenever I see, it's always like a really, really beautiful sunset. Like this morning we rode down to Glastonbury, and on the way back up you can just see the sun just rising up over the hill, and it's so beautiful. And it's like you're focused on your rowing, but sometimes when you stop and you just look around, you see all the wildlife around you. You see the eagles. We've had a couple really cool close flybys with the eagles. And it's really special to be out there at that time, and it's so peaceful, but it's also so intense at the same time. But yeah.
Yeah, it's picturesque. Like the water in the morning is glass. Like if you dropped a rock in it, it would ripple for quite a while. It's really nice. We have fog, and with the sunset, it's a really interesting, beautiful scene that you don't really experience elsewhere.
So let's shift a little bit to you guys hosting a radio show here at Trinity. So there's a lot of people who probably watch our podcast who would say, gosh, I don't know if the shared musical experience is the same as when I was growing up, right? We're not riding around with popping a cassette in the dashboard. It's a very different experience. We can really isolate through Spotify and other means. You can curate your own playlist all the time. You don't have to listen to the radio. So I'm curious how you guys started talking about your love for music and just why you wanted to tell others about it.
Well, I think our sophomore year we lived, but we both lived in high rise. But we both lived in 2 different rooms. But we were both in our rooms. We were always playing music, and I think we kind of realized Pat would play a song, and it's like, oh, I know this song, and then I do the same. And I think we just kind of both realized hey, I think we both have been talking about doing a radio show since our freshman year. But I think we have a lot in common, but still at the same time we have our own little branches where we can kind of it's something new every time, but it's something that we can both connect. I don't know, I think a lot of the guys on the team have really embraced the idea of the radio show. A lot of them listen to the show every week, and that's a lot of fun to have them, and they call into the show too. It's really cool to be able to have 2 different music tastes and kind of bring them together and kind of we play our unique stuff at the same time.
So Pat, try and describe to me your taste, which I'm sure is superior to Tommy's, but your taste, his taste, in broad terms before we get into the details.
Well, I mean, what we play on the show on a weekly basis would fall under the wide umbrella of rock, I guess, and people really like to generalize and music genres, which can be difficult for us to do, but we play a lot of blues, folk, we're really into the jam bands, seeing the Grateful Dead and their contemporaries. So when we make a playlist every week, maybe Tommy will start off, he'll throw in a couple songs, or I'll start off, I'll throw in a couple songs, we say, all right, and then we just kind of bounce off of one another, and we create a 90-minute set that comes out pretty good. Sometimes they're a little more scatterbrained than others, and other times they flow really well together, but it's always pretty fun.
So did either of you have a moment in time where you just really started I just really love listening to music, I always have music on, or was it just more gradual and then you show up at college and realize well, I got this really strong love for music and I love playing it out, rather than just putting my headphones on, I want to play it out loud?
I also think I don't think it's just about playing it in the studio. The studio in WRTC, the old one that we used to have, it was a really it was a small space, but it was really intimate, and the sound in there was really good, and the speakers were really good. And I went in there for a tour. We both went in there for a tour, and it's just there's LED lights. It's just it's a really cool experience, and it's cool to think that there are people the Hartford community is really very close knit with the station. We get people from Hartford calling in all the time. And that's just a cool experience. I didn't even know that was going to be an aspect of the show. I just thought we were just going to be making something cool together, but it's really just become something that's kind of grown into something that we both didn't really expect it to be.
Yeah, the community outreach was something that I hadn't really considered before. I mean, it's broadcast on 89.3, so I don't even know the radius. I think our station manager, Chris Coles, said it was 100 miles. He's been in Springfield, Massachusetts, and he's heard it, and even further, Chicopee. And the people, the woman before our show and the guy after our show, they're both local people. I don't want to presume their age, but they're significantly older than Tommy and I are, and they're not Trinity students. But the vast majority of DJs at WRTC are not students here. I'm not sure, maybe you would know how many students have shows, but it's running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, so there's a lot of shows.
Well, and Chris Cole, as you mentioned, the station managers, have been there for a while and does really does still work very hard to build local radio. And I think that's one of the great aspects of WRTC is building local radio, and in a medium that there's a lot of people that probably don't even know how to get the radio in their car, for example, anymore. Yeah. So let's talk music for a second. All right. So if you're starting with something, what's your go-to start? If you're stuck and you need to start building a show, what's your go-to, Tom?
That's easy.
So
wait, hold on.
Yeah.
What is it, Pat?
Oh yeah.
What's his starter?
He's gonna play two 10 to 14 minute long Grateful Dead live songs.
That's exactly what I was gonna say.
Typically 2, maybe 1, sometimes 3, but that's 75% of the time. That's the opener.
Yeah.
And so we're covering 20 minutes, and Tommy's like, well, I did my job, right?
More or less. No. I'd say it probably comes down to an even split. If it's a 90-minute show, I mean, we'll talk on the air sometimes we won't, but it would probably come down to be like an hour and 20 minutes of music, hour and 25 minutes of music, and it's usually 17 songs, which is what we found is the average. And it's pretty even split.
Yeah.
One week I'll have more than him, 1 week he'll have more than I will.
So you know where Tommy's starting.
Yeah.
So where do you go from there?
Completely. It completely depends on what I've been listening to recently. Usually we'll just throw in like songs that we've been hammering into the ground a lot in our own personal lives, and we'll throw those on there. And that's kind of the direction of the show. And then we like to have some fun with the closer. We have some songs we can sing along to a little bit, and that's typically how it goes.
Give me an example. What's a closer? What's a good...
Easy
by the Commodores.
Yep.
Sail On.
No Expectations with the Rolling Stones, but that's not a big singing song. It's more of a slow ballad.
Yeah.
We've been all over the place. We've been playing some Lana Del Rey and Claro recently, which has been a shock to our fans because they've grown so accustomed to our typical shows. So we've tried to shake things up a little bit, keep them on their toes.
So to what extent do you take that fan feedback and use it, or is it just that it's not evolved enough?
We usually say that we don't take recommendations, but there's been a couple instances where it's been local fans and not our friends calling in, who call in and tell us they love our show and they request a song, and we'll throw it in there because we really appreciate their support. But if it's one of our teammates or something like that calls in and says play this, we'll tell them to get lost.
Yeah.
We typically get like 15 to 20 requests from different people on the team this week. Like, oh, I'll play this. And you kind of have to draw the line.
Put up boundaries somewhere.
But we did get a call one time from we were doing like a Neil Young special on our show, and we got a call from a woman in
San Antonio.
And who said that her brother had was listening to the station and sent her the link. She was listening in. She made a request, and we're like, "No, you're calling from San Antonio. You gotta play the song."
Do you remember what she requested?
Do you remember?
You can say
for the turnstiles
It
or
might have
something
been,
like that.
something like that, yeah.
But we gave her that. That was a funny story because that show. So Neil Young, there was a big situation with him and Spotify, and Spotify is the streaming platform that Tommy and I both use for music, like in addition to SoundCloud and stuff, but mainly Spotify, and that's where we make our playlist for the show. And like 2 years ago, well, right before Neil Young was off Spotify, he was my #1 artist. So I'm a really big Neil Young fan, and Joe Rogan's podcast was a big controversy for Neil Young, so we said it's Joe Rogan or me. Spotify said, well, Joe Rogan makes us a lot more money, so it's you. And he said, all right, I'm out. And then I think something happened with Joe Rogan's contract with Spotify. He ended up on every platform, so Neil Young said, this is pointless, I'll put my music back on there. So Tommy and I celebrated Neil Young's music being back on Spotify so we could listen to it more frequently. And we did this with like a 90-minute show of just Neil Young songs. And we had a lot of people calling in really concerned that Neil Young had passed away. He's suffering from some illnesses right now too, and he's in old age. So after every song, we like get on the mic, we like, just a reminder, Neil Young is not dead. He's
still
very
alive.
much alive.
Yeah.
Like,
as far as we know.
It's not a memorial show. That was we kind of get yelled at a little bit for that, but it was funny.
Well, that's being in the spotlight, right?
Yeah.
You're lightning rods. You're going to draw attention. So is there a band from the 70s that is like a no-fly zone for you guys? Like, is there some band that you just say like absolutely, positively no?
I'm not a big Who fan personally.
I
mean, we played Eminence Front before because that's a great song. I struggle to get into the Who, but mostly I mean we take songs from a lot of different bands. And even if it's a band that we don't typically listen to, I think that there's good music out there from a lot of those bands. And I mean, they like a lot of them, cover a lot of different genres. I've become a much bigger Lynyrd Skynyrd fan since doing the show because I've started listening to their albums and stuff. Do you have a?
I can't think of one from the 70s, but like from the 80s, it immediately comes to mind. It's like the hair metal scene, like Motley Crue and
Okay.
Def Leppard. I would never play that.
I'm just not doing that.
No.
That's okay. All right.
Most certainly not. No discredit to anybody who enjoys their music.
So if you guys were to take the show on the road, give me the ideal road show. What would that be? You're gonna go like outside the Sphere in Vegas before one of the Dead & Co shows. What are we doing?
I'm a very big fan of both House of Blues in Boston and MGM Fenway, right across the street from each other. It's where I've seen the best shows I've ever seen. So I think that, and I mean it's right next to Fenway Park too. So that's such a great area. I've heard like a lot of really good cover bands playing outside of there too. But I think that's such a great spot to be in. It's so busy. There's always people walking there all the time. I'd say probably that, yeah.
Yeah, MGM Fenway's a good one. I'm certainly partial to indoor concerts. The acoustics are far better. I think honestly one of the best concerts I've ever been to was this summer. I saw Billy Strings at the DCU Center in Worcester.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that venue is necessarily the best venue, but that just happened to be the best concert because I really enjoyed the music. But MGM Fenway, I've seen a couple of really great shows there. Like Roofs to Soul. I listen to a lot of EDM. I've never played it on the air. We listen to everything. PT Radio is more of a subset of our musical taste. And we saw Goose in September at MGM Fenway. That was really cool. But yeah, MGM Fenway, honestly. I haven't been to that many concert venues, but that's probably one of my favorites.
So what's maybe the best connection you've made through the radio show so far? I know you get a chance sometimes to get.
Shout out to Dave the Painter. Dave the Painter calls in every show.
Yep.
He gets concerned. Sometimes last year I might have been sick or I had an exam on Thursday, so I wasn't there on Wednesday. And Tommy ran the show himself, and he would grow concerned that people were missing. He calls in a lot. Not I wouldn't say every week, but maybe 3/4 of the show, and he fires us up, and we really appreciate his support. And he's a big supporter of WRTC. He's a
big donor.
He's a great donor.
Yeah.
I would say we had a really unique experience last year. Chris, the station manager, he set up an interview with one of my favorite bands. Their big jam band, Pigeons Playing Ping Pong. I had seen them at House of Blues in Boston day before New Year's Eve. We got to interview their lead singer, and we did a whole special. And I think it really made me. I liked the band, but now I made me really appreciate their music. And they make one of possibly my favorite song ever. So it's just cool to hear, be able to talk to the lead singer of the band. And he was a really easy interviewee. We talked with him for 45 minutes. So that was a lot of fun, and that was a really good connection to make. We still gotta send them shirts. Yeah, we still haven't sent them shirts.
Merch.
We've had a couple issues with printing T-shirts.
Minor roadblocks.
Yeah.
So, where does the show potentially go after Trinity graduation next spring? Is there any chance that there's some future for the show?
We've had a lot of people asking us a lot of freshmen asking if they could take over, and Pat and I personally, I'm on the board at WRTC, so I'm trying to encourage kids to start their own shows,
right?
Because I want people to have their own thing. But it's perfect if it runs exactly its course. I think it's going to be, when it ends, it's going to be really sad, but it's going to be it's going to be perfect.
Yeah, I don't mind it dying, but I told some of the in that sort of way. When it's run its course,
sort of way.
Yeah. But I told some of the freshmen I would appreciate if they made their own show, but they called it the Pat and Tommy Radio Hour featuring Tommy and Pat. If they wanted our time slot, that would be a contingency for them, even if their names are not Pat and Tommy.
Did they get it or no?
I think I can convince them to do that.
We'll
I think it would be pretty funny. I would like our legacy to live on, but even if it's not through the title, as long as people continue to do the shows,
maybe we have to go bigger than just. If we don't have a Pat and a Tommy in the first year class, maybe we go among all athletes, find a Pat and a Tommy, and force them to do it.
That's not a bad idea.
That's not a bad idea.
We can work on that.
Yeah.
So let's talk rowing a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
This group has been building 3 trips to the national championships at the end of the season, and obviously when that's become the expectation in the program. Where do you guys see this season going? And just talk about the first few weeks on the water as you get into the heavy racing season that culminates obviously with the Heather Charles later this month.
Well, I think
That was not a segue, by the way. That was just like we're just
Clean,
turning
yeah.
the wheel.
No issue.
yeah, we
Yeah.
did on the show too. I think, I mean, first week of the season, first email that Kevin sends out in the summer says that, you know, the fall is great, and the fall is great for building fitness, for, you know, improving technique, but the ultimate goal is May 31st in Camden, New Jersey for the national championship. Like, that's always been, for the past 3 years, that's always our main focus. And it's tough to, you know, it's like a 9-month period, and it's tough to, like, you know, to think about it. But I mean, I think everyone on this team, we've all gotten, a lot of the guys on the team have gotten a taste of, you know, being there and racing against, you know, some really, really fast crews. But I mean, that's really like that goal, the national championship is just, it's really cool to have that to, you know, really strive for.
Yeah. To be realistic.
Yeah.
Tommy and I were both gone to the national championship our sophomore and junior year. Tommy was in the second varsity both years. He medaled third and second last year. I finished fourth both years in the varsity, which is a little unfortunate. It's difficult to put expectations on a season. Kind of something that we've been talking about, like our assistant coach Nate Clark. Just kind of put in the work, and it'll be rewarding. Maybe the result will be there, maybe it won't be there, because you can't really control the outcomes of how other teams race and how sometimes people are just better than you, which I don't like to admit, but I think that we'll be proud if we do everything we can this year and be able to rest on that.
Well, we're excited to watch the team progress through the year, and excited to see particularly this senior class that's meant so much to Trinity rowing and reestablishing as one of the preeminent programs in the country. Well, also, you've got new listeners. I don't know how many, but you're going to have some new listeners.
Hopefully.
That's great.
It's the Pat and Tommy Radio Hour with Tommy and Pat. I like what you did there, flipping the order. That's good.
It's also an hour and a half. It's not
Right,
an hour.
yeah. All sorts
We
of
like to have a little
misleading.
fun with it.
That's Wednesdays, 7:30 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time at WRTC. The website for WRTC, WRTC.com.
WRTCFM.com.
FM.com.
89.3.
WRTCFM.com.
A unique
89.3.
auditory sensory experience.
A unique
Main trick.
auditory sensory experience. Thanks to Pat and Tommy. Appreciate you guys coming on.
Thank you very
It was
much.
fun this morning.
Yeah.
That'll do it for this Conversations in the Coop. For all the latest news, scores, and schedules, go to bantamsports.com. Follow us on social at Bantam Sports. Until next time.